like they have a policy to be number one for people, they also have a policy to be number one for bicycles, and they are all the time competing with Amsterdam about who is the best bicycle city in the world. Again, it's very serious for us who live in Copenhagen, because we have to bicycle more in the coming years. Even before 2015, we shall go from 37 to 50%. We have to go fast then. Not everything is glorious in Copenhagen with the bicycles, because we have serious problems. But the problems now is congestion on the bicycle lanes. You cannot get through. There's no room for your shoulders, and it's really serious problem, serious congestion. And they have now decided that that should be solved, and they are now in the process of doubling the width of the major bicycle lanes to have room enough. And this is a very smart policy, because if there are enough bicycles, it's much better to use the road space for bicycles than for cars, because so many more people can be transported on bicycle lanes. So they are now in this process of widening. And where do they get the space from? Throughout this period, the space for the expansion of the bicycle network have been taken from the motor cars systematically. There are 3-4 things you can do to reduce motor traffic. You can take away parking spaces. If you can't park, you won't drive. That's good. And you can raise the price of gasoline. That's very efficient if you do it fast enough. You can also, like in London, have a congestion charge that whoever wants to drive in the city centre has to pay £8 to get inside the city centre in London. That has reduced traffic 20%. And the last thing you do, or the next thing you do, is to take away asphalt. Because every city have the amount of traffic which corresponds with the amount of asphalt. So if you have more asphalt in Bratislava, you will have more traffic. If you have less asphalt, you will have less traffic. That's what we know from all the cities. In Copenhagen, they have this policy in Copenhagen: if we reduce asphalt slowly, nobody will notice. And also the city engineer, city engineer who has been in charge in all these years, he has reduced the parking in the city center by 3% every year. He said, if I do it slowly, nobody will notice. So he has taken, and also he will say, if they can't park, they won't come. They won't drive. But what is happening is that the more driving is reduced, the more attractive the city becomes. So the more people come to the city. But now they can bicycle to the city, they can take the metro, they can take the bus. So there are alternatives, and they are smarter if we have to do something with the climate and whatever. The latest in Copenhagen is we have another problem. That is all these cargo bikes with the children. They are starting to accumulate on the sidewalks in front of the entrances. But then the city engineer has found a genius way. He has made a plastic car which can take one car parking space, and you can park 4 cargo bikes. That means transportation from 12 people on one car parking spot. Simple. That was a little story from Europe, but I'll tell you a few other stories of other cities who have the same policy of being sweet to pedestrians and sweet to bicycles. I'll tell you the story about Melbourne in Australia. A big city, looks like any city in the New World from the air. It was famous for being absolutely dull and dead. It was called the donut, something with nothing in the middle. And they decided that they could not, in the state of Victoria in Australia, accept to have the center of the city, the heart of the city, being dead in the weekend, dead at night, and uncharming the rest of the time. they decided that they must invigorate the city. And what they did was they said, in this city we walk. We shall make it absolutely attractive to walk. So they started a policy, and I know about it because I've been involved as a consultant throughout this. They started a policy of widening all the sidewalks, of putting granite on all the sidewalks, putting trees to have shade. They had the best urban furniture program I've ever seen in the world. Modern, comfortable, whatever. They had a fantastic art program in the city. They really have done whatever to invite people. So give the signal, in this city we walk. They also have a policy that no building is allowed to be dull. So no modern building, no banks, no supermarket can close to the sidewalk. They shall be bloody interesting, or they won't be allowed. Or the city architect go and make sure they make holes in the walls. Melbourne is now almost like Paris. It's a fantastic city. It's the best city in the world, apart from Copenhagen, of course. And also we have seen and documented in Melbourne that there are many more people now because they feel welcome and it's interesting. They've also stepped up the number of residences in the city centre 10 times in 10 years. So there are many more by day, by night, and 3-4 times more are sitting and enjoying and having a great time in Melbourne. What is found out is that all the economic factors are up also. If you're sweet to people in the 21st century, you're also sweet to your economy. And 3 times in 10 years, Melbourne has been named the most livable city in the world. And we are down in the corner of Australia, way, way far away, most livable. They're sitting with their hands like this and they can't get them down. Just north of Melbourne is another city. Sorry, the new thing in Melbourne is they decided to have a Copenhagen-style bicycle system, and they will in 10 years make just as much for bicycle as in Copenhagen. And they're using what is called Copenhagen style. That means parking cars protect the bicycles. North of Melbourne is another city called Sydney, and they always competed with Melbourne, and it has been very hard for Sydney to see Melbourne being by far the nicest city in Australia. The cruise ships go right past Sydney and dock in Melbourne, not very pleasant. The conferences go to Melbourne, whatever. So 3 years after the work in Melbourne, I was approached very quietly by the mayor in Sydney if it was possible to Melbourneize Sydney. That was not easy for them to say those words. But in Sydney, they're good in many things. They have fabulous buildings and iconic things, but the conditions for people moving about in the city are really awful. They're worse than London, said the mayor from London, and that means they're bad. There is now a very ambitious plan how to make Sydney much more people-friendly. Not only the city centre, but to introduce this policy of walking and bicycling. This is Main Street, Sydney today, and this is the plan we are about to introduce with tram, bicycles and pedestrians. And you can see how bad it is now.